Ta-da!
We did it!
We did it!
The first episode of Mantras and Magic.
Oh my god, it's so exciting.
So, I want to introduce you.
Please do.
This was my idea.
Okay.
This is Jeremy Renta, my sweet soul brother and soon to be actual legally related cousin.
Soon to be?
Yeah, I feel like you're only a step away from signing the paperwork.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, he's been in my family forever. I met Jeremy during, actually in preparation for an ayahuasca ceremony. We met because I was pulling tarot cards and he asked me if I could pull some cards for him. And we got to talking and he said, I've been looking for a compass. And I said, oh, how funny. And I showed him my compass tattoo. And we were like, wow, this is really serendipitous. There's something beyond just you and me being here tonight. And it happened to be a plant medicine ceremony that was scheduled on the winter solstice that year, which was like such beautiful magic to have. And after that moment, the more I got to know him, the more I was like, he needs to be heard. This talent needs to be heard. He has the most amazing voice. He has the most amazing energy. Hugs. He can't hug you through this podcast, but he can hug you with his voice.
It's true. You're the second person to say that today, actually. Nice compliment.
Yeah. Well, it helps when you're a Libra, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's how I met him. And then the more we got to know each other, the closer we got. And he can tell you more about himself in a bit when we answer a few questions that we've posed for ourselves for this first episode. But the other thing I really want to say is he is so magical, like makes things happen in his life and he doesn't even realize it half the time. And I've gotten to witness a lot of these really magical, beautiful moments. And it makes my soul happy to know that now he's living in a very magical place and using his gifts and his talents to help people heal and doing body work and energy work. And I'm so excited to see how much further this type of energy will go as more and more people get to know who he is and make use of his talents.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you, Jeremy Renta, voice, hands, and heart.
Voice, hands, heart, exactly. Yeah, voice, hands, heart, Instagram, Jeremy Renta, Instagram. You can find me on either of those locations. And it's really interesting how, you're talking about working as a healer. It's something that I've done my entire life, I feel like. And it wasn't until you get pushed by the right people that you really, a lot of the times you don't realize that you've been doing something your whole life and you've been called to it. So how I ended up becoming a massage therapist, you have a big part in that. Like I've been doing hands-on healing most of my life. I started doing body work with my dad when I was a kid and went down many other paths as career, did theater as my undergrad. I did film editing. I've always been kind of a storyteller for my master's degree. And, after that ceremony, I guess it was about 2 years actually, you had the foresight to say, you know what, you're not happy in the job that you're in. Why don't you leave that and come live with me and Anton, with you and your husband, who I performed y'all's wedding ceremony, which is also really cool. There's lots of stuff that's happened in the past 5 years since we first met. But that's how I ended up going to school for massage therapy, and so much of the stuff that I had already done in my life prepped me for that. The things that I learned in school as a massage therapist seemed kind of supplementary to the things that I was already doing as a singer, as someone who does mantra, voice work. And it came naturally to use that in my sessions. Right. I started, we're just kind of jumping into this. Apparently I'm not even going to let you ask me questions. I'm just going to kind of take it and go.
Oh, don't worry. I'll regulate. I'll cut you off in just a sec.
Okay. All right, good. I really started getting into the mantra aspect of yoga before I got into the asana practice. I
Okay,
got,
good. Stop there.
yeah, okay, good.
This is why this is called Mantras and Magic, is because
There you go.
we're going to be talking about mantras and magic and how they've so fully impacted what Jeremy and I do. Jeremy, will you introduce me?
Okay. So, hey, what's up? This is my dear, sweet soul sister, Amy. Um, which last name are we going by now? Mackie, I assume, since you're married.
Let's do Mackie since I got married.
I first met Amy at the same ayahuasca ceremony that she talked about just shortly ago. There was definitely an energetic that was coming off of her when I first came in and sat down and chose my seat. You had been sitting before. This was probably your 7th time, I believe.
Yeah, it was definitely around 10 by that point.
Yeah. So you'd already started on your path. You were doing a lot of your own work. You had already been working in magic before that. And it was, I mean, in an ayahuasca ceremony, you are doing your own work, but everyone that is there is very present, or their presence is very involved in what the ceremony ends up being. So, a tight-knit group of people can become even tighter at the end of, at the end of a 12-hour time frame. So I could feel it, I could sense it, just you being in the tent when we were working together. And it was like when we first met, very much that we knew each other from a past life. There was a connection there that was deeper than just you were the girl in the gigantic coat throwing tarot cards around,
Yeah.
So in the time since you and I have met too, what you have taught me and how you've kind of guided me, and not necessarily like by taking my hand a lot of the times, just by seeing the stuff that you're doing has been incredibly influential. We kind of discussed before we started recording this, the idea of how, I started out in mantra, you started out in magic, and then there was this crisscross, how you really got me into more of a magic practice.
And you reminded me of mantra and how powerful mantra really is.
Right. And it's what's really funny about it too, is the fact that they literally are the same thing. It's sounds, it's vibrations. If you're looking at it from a Kabbalistic standpoint, it's the numbers that go into what make up whatever the energy is. So, wow.
Literally the whole universe is open to us right now. It's amazing.
Yes, quite. So there's you. Everybody kind of already knows you as you have, you're the one that kind of started this.
I do,
I'm assuming.
But, people might not. And whether they've heard me on a podcast before or not, because I've been on Spirit Guides Radio, I've been on a couple others, I do feel like I still have a lot of my story left to share. I've kept a lot of it pretty close. And you and I were talking about this also before we started recording, of when it's time to share certain things and how magic works when it comes to timing of voicing things. And I think that's why mantra and magic are so wonderfully suited to each other, because magic operates on a speaking things into existence. Like, in the beginning was the word, and the word was God. Om, the Big Bang, all of these things are like sound becoming reality. And there are certain parts of my story that I haven't fully shared, either on the internet or on social media or over podcasts, just because, like, speaking them into existence, one, I have to try and remember them objectively, right? Because we all have our own opinions of how life happened. And two, I either didn't feel comfortable sharing them because I was like, no one's going to believe me. And then it's going to discredit and devalue it in my eyes if I get a bunch of rejection from it. Or people are going to think I'm loopy, and then they won't listen to the other things that I have to say that I feel are actually going to help improve their lives. And so I feel like this podcast is me stepping into that space of, okay, here we go. We're telling it all. And
yeah, You're right. Timing wise is really important. And we literally, the first time that we recorded was 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
It was in June of 2015.
And
So, I mean, this is something that takes a long time sometimes for things to kind of come into actuality as well. Maybe it was the fact that you and I were both in different places at that point in time. Because, I mean, where you are currently in your life, you're a mom now.
oh yeah.
You were so far from that in 2015, and I was an alcoholic at that point in
Yeah,
time. I
you
mean,
were.
well, it's just kind of just to speak truth to where my mind was and how I was spending my time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very grateful that I made it through that point in my life, and that you and I have actually remained as close as we have.
I don't think there's any other
So,
way around that. And that's a podcast we can do later too about like
yeah,
soul family.
right.
Let's, because I'm really trying during this Mercury in retrograde to keep my Mercury in check, which is my mind and which is our time. Being mindful of everyone's time, yours,
Yeah.
mine, and whoever's listening. So
Whoever's listening, you've made it 11 minutes
I'm
in.
so proud of you.
Inside.
Jeremy and I. Okay, so Jeremy's a Libra.
I am
and
a Libra.
I'm a Virgo. Do you know
You are
where
a
your
Virgo.
Mercury is?
My Mercury is in Libra.
My Mercury's in Libra too. So everybody hang on to their hats because we are going to
Yeah.
seesaw back and forth.
Somebody take notes.
Sweet air sign, just zooming around. But what's great is that means you and I both aren't afraid to speak, right? We're letting those words out. I want to ask you, like, when you first got interested in esoteric stuff, then like how did that start? Because when I met you, we were already talking about Duncan Trussell and Graham Hancock and Joe Rogan
Right.
and Aubrey Marcus and all these awesome guys who were doing what we wanted to do, right? They've had podcasts for
Right.
years and years and years. So was it listening to them that got you into it, or were you already investigating stuff prior to that and then you found them because of your investigations?
By no means. I have always been the inquisitive kid. I got sent home from Bible school because I asked too many questions. You know, it's the fact. I remember being at Sunday school as a 10 or 11-year-old and saying, "Why aren't we studying other books? Like we look at the same thing over and over again." And don't get me wrong, from an esoteric standpoint, the Bible has a lot that you can learn from, but it's been translated so many different times, and the messages that you're getting are usually coming down from some old dude with white hair. So, for me to be able to branch out and to find some type of magic was like, that was my main goal from the time I was a kid. All I ever wanted to do was to be a wizard or a magician, whichever term you want to use. And I would go to the library. I grew up in Alabama, and spirituality was boxed inside of Catholicism or being a Baptist. It was all kind of Christian based. And I would go to the library and I'm like, where are the books on magic? Like, where are some of these other paths that I knew that they were there?
Yeah.
Like I had an idea of coming from a past life of having experienced these things and being really frustrated and sad that everything was fiction. Everything was seen as something that was actually absolutely impossible. And, it wasn't really until I got into my 30s that I actually started finding books that vibed with what I was looking for. I went down the path of Eastern esotericism because it had so much more imagination to it. Mm-hmm. And there was so much power that seemed to be in mantra. So starting out with Ganesh, which seems like, Ganesh is one of the easiest deities in Eastern esotericism and Hinduism to get into, because he's friendly. He's this happy, smiling, elephant-headed, fat baby-looking god who helps you to get rid of any of the issues that you may have. He's the remover of obstacles. And the way that his mantra works, it's so short and concise, it's easy to memorize, it's easy to repeat, and it does make you feel better when you do so. Mm-hmm. Originally, that's all I knew about it. And it was like, this is really kind of cool. The more that I went down that path and started to kind of understand how the pieces of the mantra made up what the energies were, that's much further down the line, but it's just like starting with something so small and realizing that simple repetition of words can make you feel a certain way, had a big impact on me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's stuck with you and that was something that was so early is a sign
Right.
that, it's just natural. And I think a lot of people that I encounter leading circles or teaching workshops or doing what I do, they're like, man, I always felt like a witch. And I'm like, it's because you are, babe.
Yeah.
Because you are. And I think you inherently searching it out and also questioning being told like this is the only way is was like both your soul looking out for you and your soul just coming through the mind and questioning like what the mind was being programmed to believe. And mantras are reprogramming of the mind, but
they really are.
I mean, they're reprogramming on every level too, and we can talk a little bit more about that of how they work, right? Like, so I came. I'll do my version of how I came to magic. I came to magic, technically, before mantra, only because like when I was a little tiny child, I thought that I was able to find the wardrobe that had the door to Narnia in my house. I was constantly climbing in cupboards and my mom could never figure out what I was doing. Like, I didn't want to tell her I'm looking for Narnia, but I was trying to get to other worlds. Yeah. I was also convinced that I could talk to trees and animals. I like telepathically. I have all these things like I don't tell a lot of people that I remember doing as a small child. I thought I was finding fairy rings. And I was obsessed with Egyptian mummification rituals and with how to get to Avalon by like lowering the mists and raising them as you cross with the fairy. Like I was very interested in all of the esoteric things as a very young child. As soon as I could read, I devoured every book that had anything to do with fantasy and magic. And when I was in high school, I was assigned a project by my art teacher to create like a tapestry of some kind of world art, and we were each given a different one, and I was randomly assigned India. And I did this big, beautiful painting of Shiva Nataraja with a quote from the Bhagavad Gita. And I wrote it, like, I painted it in Sanskrit on this tapestry. And it was just like normal. It just came out so easily. And my mom was horrified. She was like, what is this idol doing in our house? And I was like, oh, it's just art, Mom. But I was so drawn to it. I was like, why is this image so clear in my mind? Why do I feel so comfortable creating these letters? Like they should be difficult to write, right? It's not only a different language, it's a different alphabet system. And so I was like 17 at that point. And to me, I was like, I need to learn more about this. And because of my upbringing and because of where I was at the time, it wasn't time for me yet, but the seeds were planted. And when I was finally in a place of deprogramming myself with various things, mostly because of graduate school, even though I went to graduate school for costume design for film and theater, I feel like I majored in how to be a person. I hadn't been up until that point. I hadn't been my own person. I didn't know how to stand in front of a group of people and speak confidently without ending every sentence in a question mark because I didn't have grounding. I wore too many high heels and I just was in this kind of lost, airy state. And by having the mentor that I did, Ellen, she was like phenomenal and she changed my life literally. Having her question me as who I was, I began the process of remembering myself. And at first I thought I was looking for myself. Now I know I'm just remembering who I am. And part of that remembering was me opening up a book that a friend had in her car as I was sitting in the back seat and saying, man, I always wanted to be a witch. And she turned around and looked at me and said, you already are. And that moment changed everything. That's the moment I feel like I just woke up. Sparks went off. I think I was listening to Imagine Dragons, which is like such an appropriate thing to be listening to when you're like, holy fuck, this is epic. My life is now different forever. And I, within a couple weeks, had bought my first deck of tarot cards, had looked up my astrology chart for the first time, divorced my husband at the time, like, literally did everything different. And I knew I was on this path of magic, and I was reading a book about ayahuasca. I knew I wanted to sit in ceremony. I knew I wanted to study magic formally. I was reading Spiral Dance by Starhawk. So I was like doing all the steps, and it still took quite some time because now I know I hadn't hit my Saturn return yet, but the process of developing magic went hand in hand with yoga, because instead of going to therapy because of the divorce and everything that was happening in my life, I started taking yoga classes. And I heard mantra in those classes, and I heard people talk about mantra, but I didn't put two and two together because I thought yoga was just kind of a physical practice that shifted your energy because of the physical movements you were doing. I didn't realize that that's only one of the 8 limbs on the tree, right?
Right.
Until I started yoga teacher training, which was a few years later. And then when that happened, then the mantra clicked, and suddenly that became a huge part of my magical practice. And that was when you came out to live with me, was after that. And so then it was like the fusion of the two coming together, which was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how a lot of the times we're constantly looking for permission from someone for something, like someone gave you permission, like you're a witch. You already are. It's not something that you have to do. It's not something you have to become. It's not a class you have to take. You don't have to be, assigned a certificate for it. This is already in you. Any of these abilities are already in you. And it's kind of akin to being a musician. If you're a singer, learning an instrument is one thing, but if music is in you, and it's going to come through,
Right.
So any of these things that don't have a solid, tangible form. So working with any of these esoteric energies, which is one of the things that's so incredibly amazing about magical work, or about that aspect of yoga, is it's so freeing, and it's available to anyone. So I know I kind of stopped midway through where I was on my path, but coming into, jumping back into where I was, like finding Ganesh, and we're starting to work with those mantras. I found in 2012 a book that you and I both have kind of been obsessed with over the past couple of years. A book by Thomas Ashley Farrand. The audio book is Healing Mantras, and it's being able to hear these different sounds and see how they make you feel, and you literally can feel the energy moving in certain parts of your body.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to understand what that meant. Like, why do these sounds why do these words make your body feel the certain way? Why does the energy in an entire room change? If you go to a kirtan and someone is doing, if they're doing a Kali mantra, there's a lot of heat. There's a tension in the air. There's a certain feeling that is associated with these deities, or with different deities, and the energetic that goes along with those energies. And this is something that I think it'll probably be a few podcasts down the line, but in Vedic thought, there are the chakras. We have the 7 chakras that are inside of our body. And one that's like right outside, that's at our crown. And each of those chakras, at least the first 5, have different petals on them. And the petals correlate to different letters in the Sanskrit alphabet. So the idea is that by saying these words, you're vibrating the petals of those chakras. So for each letter, it's one of the petals, and that energy courses through a certain way. It's deep magic, but the idea is, how do you move those energies through your system to pull in that energy to you, and then to put it back out into the world in whatever way, shape, or form that you want to see it manifest, right?
Yeah.
So once I started to kind of understand the science of magic and of mantra, it became a lot more real to me. Like there's the really cool woo aspect of being able to do magic or witchcraft or mantra, whichever path that you're taking, but to actually be able to understand it. Like, it's kind of the Golden Dawn. That was one of their aims, is the, the process of spirituality, but with the science of, understanding it, and where you can write it down. You say, this is the things, these are the experiments that we've tried, and we have the same repeated thing happen over and over again when we do this. It's esoteric because it's not tangible, but you can do these practices and you can see that you have the same results over and over again.
Right.
So for me, that was a big thing. Like, I want to be able to understand it, and I want to be able to explain it to people. I don't want to be the crazy wizard up in the mountain who people are like, I don't trust that guy. I want people, especially as a body worker and as an energy worker, for people to come to me, say, I'm having this issue, and I say, well, this is probably what the problem is. Or for me to be able to explain how it is that I can sense, where they have blockages in their body, or where it is that they're stressed or overtaxed. Someone who can come in and has, young kids, who is trying to work a job and is overexerting themselves from an energetic standpoint, may have problems in their solar plexus chakra, and you can usually feel where those are.
Right.
That chakra is being overworked,
and so the mantra brings it out.
Yes, there are certain mantras that can kind of calm that, or to redirect the energy. There's extremes on all aspects. There's the whole idea of any of this stuff is tantric. There's one extreme and the other extreme, and what we're all kind of looking for is to try to find that balance. We're looking for the middle path.
And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that Tantra is magic.
Yes, and Tantra is not just sex.
Right. The West
it's the Western idea of it is, you're trying to get your energy to rise. You're trying to get your kundalini to rise. And for some reason, because we're a sexually repressed culture, we stop at the sacral chakra. Well, yeah, that's helpful, but you want to be able to move the energy from your sacral up into your solar plexus, up into your heart, and out or down.
Right.
Like, there's invocation and there's evocation. You're moving energy in both directions. So I was actually thinking about this today. The whole idea of abstinence for monks or for priests, like, I think this is something that's been lost, is the kundalini aspect of it. The reason why there's abstinence for those types of practitioners is because they're to be able to actually connect to source and actually be able to help manifest and be able to guide people with whatever their spiritual path is. And it's not just some random reason that you don't have sex. It's actually something for you to be able to keep your energy inside of you, and to be able to use it for the good of mankind in whatever way, shape, or form that is. For me, a big part of that is healing. I had a client the other day, and she was a yoga practitioner, and she was like, do you do Reiki, like, during your sessions? What exactly are you doing? I was like, well, I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'm a polarity practitioner. I do cranial sacral. It's like, I have a magic practice. And she kind of stopped and looked at me, and she was like, you do what? And it's like, well, it's magic. It's the whole idea of doing yoga and mantra and breath work and all of these things is to be able to build that energy up. And then the magical aspect is, how do we put that out into the world? And I choose to do it as a healer.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's talked about in, I'll give it back to you in a second. It's talked about in the Yoga Sutras is the cities that Patanjali talks about. And it's just, we look at those as like, you can become invisible and you can become tiny and you can do all these other things, but it's like, our reality is formed by what we choose it to be. So you can use it for whatever you want to do, you know?
And a lot of people who read about the siddhis, and I just want to spell that SIDDHIS, because it sounds like cities, like the kind that people live in. But it's not. We're talking about a specific thing that's mentioned in Vedic texts. So ancient written documents from India that describe certain processes that happen after a practitioner does yoga for an extended period of time. And all of these magical systems that you're bringing up, whether it's the Order of the Golden Dawn, whether it's yoga or any other type of esoteric practice, and they all are practices. You practice witchcraft, right? You practice yoga. You have to do them actively. If you don't do them actively, you're it's like muscles atrophying, and you're developing muscles that are already atrophied when you're doing this type of work. And a lot of people don't realize that like anyone has the potential to be psychic. Anyone has the potential to be a witch or a wizard or whatever you want to call yourself, shaman. Typically,
Some of it have more of a natural inclination for
yeah.
them. And that's also part of like what our star chart is. Like, I don't have a whole lot of water in my chart. And like you had said before, like that's because I've learned a lot of that from past lives. Like that stuff is already there. I don't necessarily need to learn that lesson. And it's going to help me to progress to learn the other things that I need to do in this life.
Yeah. And I feel like with magic, with yoga, with mantra, we find the parts of ourselves that are out of balance because we're either super duper attracted to it or we're super repelled by it. And so either way, we have to investigate it. And it becomes a process of learning, okay, so what am I naturally gifted in? What am I naturally not gifted in? And which muscles do I want to work? Like some kids who are naturally gifted and talented swimmers, but they have a really strong inclination to play basketball. Well, they're going to have to work a lot harder to play basketball, but they might enjoy it a little bit more because that was what they wanted to do versus like their natural gift, which is swimming, which might be what they're pushed to do by other people. So also recognizing that within the esoteric world, I think is really important, where you have a natural gift with your voice. And you say you don't have a whole lot with water, but you are so in touch with your emotions, with your sensitive side. You're like all water in a weird way.
I'm actually crying right now.
See, there you go. And I feel like each of us has the ability to balance it all out. And I think that's alchemy, right? A lot of people are like, what the heck is alchemy? Right. Real alchemy is completely balancing yourself internally and externally with yin yang, with Ida and Pingala, up the Shishunanadi, with all four elements, earth, air, fire, water, center and spirit, with like every single aspect of yourself on a soul level, on an energetic level, on an internal homeostasis, physical level has been balanced. Well, then you've got the elixir of life. And you've figured out alchemy at that point. And I think that's what every single system is trying to get to, whether it's mantra, whether it's magic, whatever its name is. And you've made a good point too, with your healing work. People are like, what the heck are you doing? Because we don't have words for the crossovers in our society. Right. Everybody's like in their own denomination when it comes to energy work. They're like, are you doing Reiki or not? And you're like, yes, and.
Yeah, it's a marketing tool. Right. It's another way for somebody to kind of pick things up. So, yeah, I mean, and some people have a natural ability to talk. Some people have a natural ability to listen. You know, like there's all of these things, like you said, are factors in what make us who we are and what the soul contract is that we've signed before we come here. Like whether you believe in past lives or not, whether you believe that we're here for a reason or not, like there are certain things that we come into this life to experience. And, you know, again, part of that whole finding the middle path on that is figuring out what we do with it, you know, right. Like whether you're thrown in jail for 15 years, like with Damien Eccles, or 18 years, and him going through that experience is what, you know, kind of allowed him to progress on his path as a magician. Or for me, you know, I've had health issues. Just like I think we all have, but like that has been a big focus for me, is to figure out like what do I need to do to make my life or make my body feel better throughout my life? Like what can I give up? What are the things that I'm actually struggling with? Yeah. And part of that too is, you know, part of that is, you know, what other guideposts we have. So whether it's our astrological chart, whether it's the tarot cards that actually match up with the day that we were born. Like we have all of these little breadcrumbs that are kind of left out for us. And if we're willing to look at them and be, you know, open to the possibility, not everything's going to work for everybody, but if something does speak to you saying, oh, this is actually something that's going to be helpful for me later on down the line, then you can take that. And then if you know, are willing to see the other things that are kind of coming in the world, you're like, this is how this ties back in. Right. So just for example, in my for me, the tarot cards that are big or that showed up for me and for my birthday are the Devil and the Lovers. So it's about autonomy. It's dealing with addiction. It's dealing with being my own self, and also being willing to work with other people. Finding
and
that
finding the
balance.
right person to work with.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
a lot of people don't realize if you've never seen the original Rider Waite tarot deck, those cards are direct mirrors of each other.
They're the exact, well, not the exact same, but they
like, well, they have a central power figure. In the Lovers, it's depicted as what in Western society would be like a nice angel, right? Like very Aryan, blonde hair, blue-eyed, white wings. And in the Devil card, it's what Western society depicts as a devil, red skin, horned, hoofed being. And what a lot of people in magic recognize when they look at those two cards is they're the same thing, right? It's just the perspective of how you look at them and how you work with them. And in both of those cards, there's a male and female figure at the bottom that are joined together. And in the Devil card, they're joined in chains. And in the Lovers card, they're like joined with energy and with like swirling elements and things. And it's so funny you brought it up. I had a tarot reader pull those two cards for me when I was like at the crossroads of my path, where I could decide to be stubborn and be pig-headed and continue on the way that I thought was best ego-wise, or I could surrender, give up everything I thought I was going for, and go on the soul path and find a really wonderful life waiting for me. And he was like, it's your choice. Whoever you continue to be in relationship with is going to determine the outcome and how that angel looks. Like, is the angel going to look like this glowing figure that's heavenly and like what we feel like is good? Or is the figure going to look really hellish and really awful and like he's controlling you? And so to me, it was a sign of like, ooh, from at that time of the relationship I'm in. But for you, it's also like, it's the relationship you have with your mind, with the ego, with the soul, with like you partnering with me to work on something versus you partnering with someone else to work on something. It's like every relationship. And for Libras, of course, that came up for you. So it's like we're finding that magic has this way of not just guiding us, but helping us really tap into all the realities that are possible. And then when you are an active practitioner of magic, you're choosing that reality. Like, I don't know if you found this, but like when you start doing a mantra and you feel the energy in the room shifting and you're like, oh, I'm responsible for this now. And there's like a little fear that comes with the power of responsibility when it comes to what you're choosing to create. Like, are you going to call in Kali at this moment? Are you going to actually call in this hugely powerful being who's known for radically, dramatically changing everything? Or are you going to call in someone who's a little bit softer? Are you going to call in Durga, who's known for just protecting? I mean, she's pretty fierce. She's really damn fierce, actually. When you look at her poster looks exactly the same as Kali in my room almost. But at the same time, she's known to be more gentler to the humans who are calling on her name, right? So I feel like whether you're doing just a magical invocation ritual, like in a witch's circle or something, or whether you're sitting on your meditation pillow holding your mala and chanting an invocation, you're calling that energy up within yourself as well as outside of yourself, and you're realizing that like the inner world becomes the cosmos. And I feel like you have you've experienced that really directly where you've called something in and like everything around you has shifted. And you talked about it a little bit earlier, where you could feel the room actually becoming hot.
Right. Yeah, working, and I'm hard-headed, I can definitely say. And, it's part of it is like upbringing. My mom was, and still is, she's very direct. She's a Taurus. It's like, if I'm obviously as an air sign, I get really hyped up and I get excited about something, whatever it is that I'm explaining. She'd be like, stop, give me the details. She just wants the facts. And for me, I knew that working with an energetic that was kind of like that strict mom would be something that would be helpful for me, because I sometimes, you know, you just need to be kind of like put down, you slap down or held down and be like, this is not working. You're too frantic. Just calm down. So working with Kali, she is very direct and she is very succinct. I don't know if this podcast is really the best to go into my experiences
Not
meeting
today,
her.
no, but we will.
Yeah. But, you know, the times that I've interacted with her, either in mantra or in, like I said, in ceremony, it is, she doesn't mess around, we'll say. I mean, she is the representation of time. She is the dark space between life and death. You know, it's that radical transformation. You want something to happen, you're putting it out into the universe, and you're like, Kali, please help me to do it. You might not like how that thing comes about in your life. You'll get the results, and it may happen faster than you expect, but it's again, you have to be mindful with whatever it is that you're working with, just like you said. So, but it's also about like focusing where it is that you want that to go. You know, I had the same experience the first time I sat in ceremony working with Ganesh, because again, I had this idea that he's this gentle energy. It's a he, but he is seen as feminine. So it's kind of a nurturing, will kindly move things out of your way and, you know, to help you to kind of move along. Well, again, from a tantric perspective, Ganesh is going to move things out of your way. He's also going to put stuff in front of you so that you understand exactly what it is that you're dealing with. So when I first went and sat in ceremony, I was like, I want to have a better understanding as to my relationship with outside substances, whether that was alcohol or plant medicine or relationships. You know, I wanted to be able to understand how it was that my interactions with those things affected me. And I thought, this is going to be an easy year. Yeah. It wasn't. It sent me on a bender. Like the next couple of years were incredibly difficult. Yeah. I spent a lot of time really kind of going down that dark path to see what the positives were and what the negatives were. And I can honestly say, for me, the negatives outweighed the positives. So those parts of my life kind of went by the wayside. It's not always just about like, well, these things are bad, alcohol's bad, or, you know, whatever. Do they serve you? Do they help you to become a better person? And do they help you to connect with spirit, or however you want to look at it, to help you actually accomplish the goals that you're on this planet to do? And it can help you change whatever these energies are, whichever deities that you're working with, and that goes into angelic energies as well. Is it something that is going to be beneficial to you? Because again, from a tantric perspective, the world needs villains. You know, the universe has to have light and dark, whether you're looking at it from a dualistic or a monistic standpoint.
And that's a whole other podcast on its own too.
Exactly. I'm throwing words out that might not make sense to people. Yeah. But you can't have one without the other. Right. You know, I know one of your favorite quotes, and I'm sure you'll say it because I'm not going to do it. I'll butcher it. I don't have it memorized.
To light a candle is to cast a shadow.
There you go. You know, you have to have something to compare it to. Yeah. So there you go. Stop right there.
I know. Okay, so speaking of comparisons, do you feel like with building more of a magical practice, because now you're doing your own self-study of like a very deep ceremonial magic, do you feel like that's enhanced your mantra? Like now you're actively doing energy in a different way because of it?
Yes, and again, I think it's also it's one and the same thing. Doing ceremonial magic is literally setting the space. You're clearing the energetics of the room. You're clearing the energetics of yourself, and then, you know, whether you're doing it as a circle casting or however it is that you're dropping into ceremony, once you start invoking those energies and you start inviting those energies in, I think that you have a clearer relationship with them. For me, doing table work, I see as ceremony. I think as a magician, the further we get down this path, the more you realize that everything is ceremony. Yeah. Everything has a spiritual connection. And if you're not looking at it from that standpoint, then you're missing out, to be completely honest, because life it's incredible. Like, we get to play. If you look out at the world, whether it's raining or snowing or it's sunny, like, this is a fantastic place to experience reality.
Right.
You know, so being able to work with these energies and to, you know, help you to become a better musician or help you to be a healer or even like a cook. Like if you're putting ceremony in everything, it is going to make your life better. It's going to make everyone else's life better. So, you know, a lot of the times my practice gets me up at not even the crack of dawn, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like I'll have this tap on the shoulder by spirit to get up and to go drop into my meditation. And, you know, Neville Goddard, who was a mystic from Barbados, talks a lot about the power of the liminal state between waking and sleeping. So for you to get up in the middle of the night and to do something that is really kind of uncomfortable, like you want to be in bed, you want to stay kind of snugged up, you know, next to your pillows or your love or your dog, and to be able to drop in to that in between space of wake and dreaming,
Mm-hmm.
and to start to kind of pull some of those energies in from your dream world and to actually start implementing them is incredibly powerful.
Right.
So yeah, it's been hugely beneficial. And like I said, I realized that it's actually kind of one and the same, because whether you're looking at Hebrew or you're looking at Sanskrit, it's the sounds, it's the tone, and it's the energy of the letterings of the words that you're saying that are actually causing the change.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily need to be defined by what you're actually saying. It's the intention of what's going into it. So again, another podcast that's a little bit of a deeper topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a huge fan of how my practice has changed.
Cool.
What about you? How is mantra affecting you?
I feel like for me, it's really both. It's done a wonderful alchemical thing of both grounding and elevating my practice, where sometimes I felt like, so over the years, I had like a really specific way of doing ritual and a really specific way of tapping into the sacred and getting into an altered state of consciousness, which is really what happens in any of these practices. Like that's what we're going for. But then as soon as I had kids, it's like, oh, now what do I do? Because getting a moment alone, like I think that's why the timing thing is so crucial, because for you and I, there wasn't time because I just wasn't in that space. I was in new mom mode, and now they are old enough to play with dad outside for an hour without disturbing me. So there's like, now there's time, whereas there wasn't before. And while I was in that space, I got closer and closer and closer to mantra, because I always sing to them. And I always felt like I was singing certain chants over and over again. And they really respond to them, like ones that other witches have written for ritual. They loved them. And the more that I got into mantra, the more that I felt like I was doing energy work and shifting energy and working on a lot of other things that I wanted to be doing in the old ways that I knew how, but in a new way, because I was able to just be around my kids and they actually start chanting along. And so it's this space of magic in a whole new way. And with that being said, someone just knocked on the door. So I think we're at time, but we've got so much more to investigate, and it makes me really excited.
Well, I'm just glad that there's all these Mondays for mantra and magic to happen.
Yeah.
So
Monday, mantra, magic.
There you go.
A good space to be in. And yeah, and if I will be shameless about plugging our Patreons. So for me, I will have links to my Patreon. I'm waiting for Jeremy to give me links to his. But if you want a recording of either he or I, and eventually it will be he and I chanting these mantras for you to incorporate into your practice, my goal is to record at least one every week. I might be able to get another one up as well, depending on how short they are, but some of them are pretty long. And Thomas Ashley Ferron really cutely calls them freight train mantras when they get to a certain point. It just feels like you just keep chugging. And so if you want to support us, if you like what you're hearing, if you become a Patreon member, Jeremy actually has those recordings from all those years ago when he and I first met. So if you want to hear the real first recording,
Classic
Yeah,
episodes.
join our Patreon and you'll get access to these secret episodes. Nobody else will. They're not up on anything, so you have to join Patreon to get them. And either he or I will be able to give you access to that. So we'll be creating all of that this week. Please be patient with us if you're listening to this as we release it, because we're in a Mercury retrograde phase. So technology is just taking extra patience. That's all. It's not working improperly. It's just us learning how to be human and patient. But please subscribe to our Patreon and support us in what we're doing so that we can support you by returning the favor with magic and mantra and healing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. Well, you can't. I mean, you can try.
Okay. Yes, support our Patreon. Some of the, like you were saying, some of the freight train mantras, if we do 108 repetitions of them, it could take a while. So, but it is something that is helpful. And I cannot say enough good things about how these practices have helped my life. I'm very grateful for you, Amy. And I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have positive impacts on the people who are listening.
Let's manifest it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for doing this with me, brother. We will record again soon.
All right, sis. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.